Okay, hello.
Hello.
How are you? Hi, Adrià. Pleased to meet you again.
Same. Okay. So how is this going to work? Hello, Stefan. I should probably introduce myself first because nobody watching is going to be familiar with me. I am the person responsible for translating the newsletter emails that you receive every week, basically. I've been doing that for about a year, but for today, I'm basically just a WinnerOdds user. I'm going to be presenting my own experience with WinnerOdds football, and I'm going to be asking many questions that I do have, and I hope that many people have as well, because there's so much to be cleared up, in my opinion. There's been the algorithm changes going on, the significant boost in performance, the price increase, the limited access to the service. So to clear all of these questions, we have Miguel, who I hope I don't need to introduce him to the audience. He's the brains behind all of these, the primary person responsible for people here having made thousands of dollars. So he's going to be giving his perspective on everything happening to WinnerOdds football. And I believe that to start, he's going to be working with a chart that he has prepared using basically the system averages of WinnerOdds football and WinnerOdds tennis. And unless you have anything you want to say, feel free to show it to the screen.
Okay, yes. Just to start with, or to continue your presentation, I would like to thank you for being here and helping us with the English streaming. That is also
No
very challenging for us because, as you know, most of our users are from Spain. But day by day, the foreign users for us are increasing in number, and also in the community Discord server, we also have more and more participation. And I think that this
definitely noticed a significant increase in the activity, which is great to see.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that because we will have soon also a channel for following the matches in live, so that we don't feel so alone when following the matches from home or by the mobile phone. And well, I'm very happy to introduce this subject about the football algorithm that we have upgraded, and after around 3 years since the launch of the beta of the football service. And I think that there are many things that should be explained because normally we change very slowly the algorithms, but in this case it has been a surprising increase in number of picks and also in the performance of the algorithm and the results. So I think it is necessary to explain a little bit about that. And also, as the price has increased and is similar to the tennis service, for people that is not or has joined recently WinnerOdds or is not in WinnerOdds, it will be hard to choose which is the best algorithm for him. So there are some differences that I would like to comment to, and I think that it will be interesting for all of them. Okay, we are at the moment around 10 people in the channel, and thank you for being there. And as also this streaming will be saved, perhaps more people will take profit from it. And now I'm sharing this chart I have prepared here. Can anyone confirm if you are?
I do see it.
You can see it? Okay. Confirm, they can see it. Okay, so this is a table. It's a first version of this table that we are going to share also in the website because we think that is very interesting for them. And well, first of all, we have two algorithms. Tennis is working since 2016. It has been tested for a long time. We know that we have several categories of tournaments. So we have bigger tournaments like ATP or women tournaments. And also then we have the ITF and smaller tournaments with lower liquidity, but also more opportunities, as there are many matches, and also the odds are easier to beat. And in case of football, we started programming football in 2017, and until 2020 we didn't start sharing our recommendations. We had more or less 1 year of beta testing, and then I think it was in 2021, just after the pandemic, when we started with the service as it was until 1 month ago, with a very low price and the specific characteristics of this service. As you can see, we have selected a lot of characteristics. So some of them are very important, and some of them will change as we have more data. But we can start commenting them by this order, and then if you have any question, please also ask about it. First of all, one main difference between both algorithms is that when you place a bet on football, perhaps you are holding that bet open for a long time, probably several days, because most of the matches are played during the weekend, and the odds are offered by the bookmakers 2, 3, even 5 days ago before the match. So in order to take profit from these odds, from this expected value or positive expected value odds, you can bet on them a lot of time or very soon, so that you have a higher ROI, because those odds are not so well adjusted. So the main difference when placing the bets is, for football, you will have your money in an open bet for a long time, and in soccer this doesn't happen so often, because matches are decided every day. So there is a player that wins a match, and then you have which is the next rival, and then the bets in tennis are between 12 and 24 hours, so they are resolved very fast compared with football. So this is a difference, and for tennis it's an advantage. You move your money easier. And well, yeah, I know you have some experience on this, and how do you balance your money between both algorithms, or do you have probably enough bankroll at the moment so that it doesn't affect you?
That's the thing, right? Like, a really interesting picture that this chart paints is that it challenges this belief that tennis is more reliable and consistent than football. Because I feel like in the winner odds community, there's always been this notion that tennis is the way to go, and football is more of an afterthought. And I'll be first to admit that football is the algorithm that I'm least familiar with. Like, I dipped my toes into it a few months in the past. It didn't yield great results, and I basically decided to prioritize other things. But do you believe, like, looking at the yield, we can see that the yield is higher in football. So do you believe that if users had put more faith in the service all of these years and used it with the same bank size as with tennis, do you believe that now the total profit would be almost equal? Because looking at this table, I feel what some other people might be feeling, which is regret not to have jumped into the service earlier.
Yeah, probably, but I will show the influence of the upgrade we made some months ago, probably almost 2 months. And you cannot stare only at the yield, because the average odds is very different in soccer and in football and tennis. We are betting average weighted odds in tennis lower than 1.7. It's around 1.6 more or less. And in football, you are betting odds higher than 2 on average, so that there is a big difference on the average odds. That means that the yield you can achieve with higher odds is always higher. So comparing these two yields, the results, it seems that would be better with football, but it is not so clear because the odds are also higher and the variance and the risk is also higher. So for the same risk, you need much higher yield for higher odds. So it is something that we have to be cautious with. The yield is higher, but also the risk is higher as the average odds are almost 2.4 or something like that. But yes, then taking into account that, I was always asking myself why people didn't increase the bankroll with the football service. Until 6 or 8 months ago, it was on average 1,000 euros only. And you could take profit from this service with much higher bankroll, 3,000, 5,000, because the liquidity of each match is even higher than in tennis. So probably double or something like that. So
Right,
the average bankroll at the moment is still lower. As you can see here, we have average bankroll in tennis about 5,000, and football is half of that, is 2.5 thousand. But it's increasing as the users are taking profit, and also the new users will go in with much higher bankroll. So I think that there will be an overpass from the football bankroll to the tennis one, and that is something that will happen because of the results, and also because the people will be aware that this algorithm is a very good opportunity, and they will increase the available bankroll for this sport. So I was surprised mainly by the low bankroll users had 6 or 8 months ago, and it has been increasing slightly, but at the moment it's still lower than in tennis.
So for the people wondering which algorithm to use, because when I was in football, like a couple of years ago, to me the biggest negative was the fact that it froze your money for many days, which is what you mentioned earlier. But considering that, as it says here on the chart, most tennis matches happen on weekdays, whereas for football, the selections kind of get resolved over the weekend. And I believe they stay up for very long. So provided that you have sufficient bankroll for both of them, do you have any reason not to use both at once? Because I cannot think of one, please.
A reason for what?
To not use both services at once.
No.
Sufficient.
The only reason would be bankroll availability. So if you have 2,000 euros only, probably tennis is better because you move your bankroll faster and you can grow this bankroll faster. But on the other side, until some weeks ago, football was very cheap, so it would be almost for free to play some bets on the weekend. And I think that is a good idea to use both services, because although you have some freeze money since Tuesday or Wednesday until the weekend, most of the matches are also offered in the weekend, especially the handicaps and the over-unders are those bets are placed close to the match. So you will always have opportunities, and the thing is having your bankroll 100% always in open bets. If you have bankroll that is not used at some moment, then you need to add more services like this or any other tipster to your portfolio, because if the money is quiet in your wallet, it is not producing and is not taking profit of the expected value. So it is a good comparison which days of the week are the highest volume for the tennis and the highest volume for the football. And even if you have some freeze money Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday, you will be able to place many bets during the weekend from Friday to Sunday. So probably even if you lose or you miss some bets in the early part of the week, you can take profit of most of them on the weekend. That is something that we will also study and show a table like we do in tennis in the annual report. We are continuously updating, and it will be a good way to know, well, perhaps if I bet only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have more than 50% of the bets available. It's a good way to complete or to adapt both algorithms to your betting availability or your betting style, more or less. So it's a good way to use both of them, but of course you need perhaps 3,000 or 4,000 euros to take profit from both algorithms.
So we could basically say that ever since the algorithm changes, we're talking about a completely different algorithm than it was before.
Yeah.
And I have a few questions about these changes because they're very significant. Yeah. And by just looking at the graphs of winner odds football, you can easily distinguish when that happened. Like there's this huge spike that hasn't stopped going up since the improvements. And basically a couple of questions that I have just to satisfy my curiosity, because were these minor tweaks or was it basically an algorithm overhaul? Because did you expect this boost in performance?
I like your question because I am very pleased to answer it because it's we have spent a lot of effort, a lot of time. We didn't know that we were going to achieve better results, but I had the feeling that football predictions could be better than we were working with. And well, I think that even we are continuously analyzing, especially, of course, when we have bad results, we always put more effort on it. That is normal. If everything goes very well, we don't want to touch anything. But in football, there was something that could be improved. And some time ago, I found this book recommendation on Twitter. I don't know if you can read it or it is in the opposite direction, but it's Causal Inference and Discovery in Python. It's something related with the correlation between variables and cause and effect. So these are some principles that we were using by logic, or because it's logic. No, if you have ratings, if you have goals scored, you have position in the classification of each league. So we have a lot of information, but I didn't ask myself the correct questions about which are the best inputs to use in the algorithm. So I used as much information as possible. And at that time, we were using some variables correlated between them so that we thought that we had more info, but it wasn't, because both variables or several variables introduce the same info at the same time, and that is not good for our algorithm. So when I read this book, I was thinking, and I reviewed all the inputs, and I was not only looking at the correlation, but also other characteristics of each input, and we changed some of them. Not very big changes, but very important changes, because we added new information, so new variables, or variables that we were using but not correlated with other variables. And it was a small improvement for the probabilities, but a big improvement for the final results, because we are based, of course, in the probabilities we are using or we are obtaining from our neural networks. And this was probably last summer when we started changing and making some tests after reviewing everything of every part of the algorithm. And I was reading the code with our programmers and taking a look on it. And when we change something, we have to wait a lot of time before knowing or being sure if this change is a good one or not. And even after being sure of that, it is not so easy to change, because we have, first we compare the back test, then we perform a real test for 1-2 months or some time, and after that, changing that in the recommendations we provide to the users is also takes some time. It's not very easy to change from one computer from to another, or from one server to another. Is something like you have to be very careful, because if you have a mistake, it could imply a lot of euros in 1 week.
Right.
So we have to be very careful with that, and that was the reason that this change could take around, I don't know, not 1 year, but almost 1 year since we started changing things in the algorithm.
I do have
Well,
a
I think,
question
yeah,
that I've seen some other people ask that should improve the confidence that they have in the price increase, at least. Were these changes tested retroactively? Like, did you take a look at the previous years to verify if this current trend would have also been achieved had the changes been applied a few years in the past?
yeah.
Because if so, that would make users very confident that they're not going to regret paying this new price.
Yeah, well, there is something that we have to take into account, that is that until we don't place real bets, we never know how the odds will move. So
Right.
when we place bets, probably for the algorithm, if no one is betting, is a very good result. We can assume that the volume placed on that bet is high, and in the reality, it can be very low. And the odds that are not so profitable, we can think that we also place the total volume, and then the reality is very different from the back test we are performing. So any change we do, until we don't place the real money in the game, we don't know if we will have the same results in the back tests that in the reality. So that is one of the reasons that any change has to be very well. We have to be very sure of that.
Right.
For example, in soccer or in football, is very important, this part, because in tennis normally we have odds and they move in one direction. They lower, or they are lower, or they are higher since the beginning. They move in one or perhaps two steps. But in soccer we have a lot of news. Then the odds go up, go down. When we are close to the match, the odds move a lot. So it's something that is very difficult to take into account in the algorithms, and we have to check it in practice, and that is one of the most of the bigger difficulties we found in football, because we can have very good results in the back test and not so good results in the real betting and the real volume we place. That is one
Interesting.
the main reason.
A user in the chat was talking about betting restrictions because this chart that you have on the screen shows that they are much more lenient in football than in tennis. But do you think that that is just because the results up until now have been kind of mild? Or do you think it's just inherent to the market? Do you think that if the results stay being this amazing, within a few months, more sites are going to start restricting users almost as fast as it happens with tennis?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I cannot speak for myself, because I almost have no bookies to place bets, as I have been restricted and closed in many of them. But what I know is which is the maximum bet you can place in different sports, and especially in football. If we take as a reference Bet365, the normal maximum profit you can take from a bet is around 600 euros or even higher. Sometimes it's 250, but normally you can place bets higher than 500, 600. So I imagine that if I was the bookmaker and people was placing bets to win 100 euros per bet, it is worse in a very small market like ITF, where the maximum profit is 250 or 375 euros. So you are closer to the maximum. than in football, where you are far from the maximum. Of course, the higher your bet is, or the bigger your bet is, it will be easier for you to get restrictions. So you have more margin, or the bankroll or the bet size you can use in football can be higher until you get restricted. And that is the only data I am sure of it. The other thing is, which markets are you betting on? It is normal to bet on ITF, or it is normal to bet in the second league of Hungary. I don't know how the bookmakers apply restrictions depending on the league. I assume that probably by betting in very small leagues, you will also have higher risk of restrictions. But even then, if the maximum profit per bet is much higher in football than in tennis, probably restrictions will come later in football than in tennis. But I don't have my own experience like in other markets like tennis or table tennis, where I have some experience on that.
Yeah, because I'd like to put my own experience on the table, because as you said, you almost have no betting sites to use for football at this point. And over the past few years, I've run my tennis scores, meaning that I've exhausted almost all tennis sites in Spain. And now that football is booming, the Spanish users are using like 1xBet, they're using TonyBet, RetaBet, Winamax, Bet365, JokerBet. But out of all of them, I basically only have Winamax available. The others closed my accounts, and the ones that limited me, they also limited me in football despite only using tennis, at least the ones I checked. This chart illustrates that both services can be used together. But do you think that's actually practical? Because if the belief is that sites are going to take much longer to limit you with football, to the point that you can use the service for many years, is it worth it to use tennis and risk getting those sites restricted entirely? What do you think about that?
I don't have an answer. It depends on the bookmaker mainly, because probably big bookmakers will not take into account so much the market, and will take more into account your behavior and your profits. And small bookmakers will be more aware of which markets are you using, more than which is the profit you get, because they have less bets and they have less people betting on very small leagues or very small tournaments. So the market will have more, or you will raise a flag high sooner in small bookmakers than in big bookmakers, where probably you can mix both sports and you get restricted by your profit more than the markets you are using. But as I have said, I don't know, and it will be very interesting to know or having the users' feedback. Perhaps users that only use football can help us too to explain which is the length or the life of their accounts.
I'd be
And of
really
course,
interested in seeing that.
yeah. And I
Because right now,
encourage
football is
them
looking
to.
amazing.
Excuse me?
I'm saying that right now, the stats shown right now for football, they're looking just outstanding. So if this reality that restrictions take much longer, it's still obviously the way to go to me. Like people on Discord were saying that if football keeps this up, it's not going to be compared to tennis, it's going to be compared to table tennis. And that's saying a lot. It's immense praise. So do you think there's an argument to justify that, looking at the stats?
Well, I have some numbers here regarding the number of bets per week, or the number of, or the total volume placed, and the profit. And well, I think that it is very difficult to beat table tennis, because the number of matches per week is totally an abuse. You can place even 800 bets per week, so it's double than in soccer, in football. Football you can place at the maximum 400, but the normal is 300 bets per week. And in tennis is also around 300, 400 bets per week. And this is the maximum, no? Or the recommendations we provide. So a user probably gets half or 40% of those recommendations. So even with very good results, football is very different from table tennis, that also you place a bet and in 30 minutes you have your money again in your account. So there is no
Do you think there
bankroll
is a
limit.
possibility to achieve that in football? That's a question that I had running through my mind. Like I said before, to me, the worst con of football is the fact that you get your money stuck basically all week. So it's just a bit annoying to manage your bankroll. It's not a big deal. But in table tennis, in order not to stress the market very much, the bet notifications are sent 7 minutes before games start.
Yeah.
So do you think there is any room to include that in football eventually? Or do you think that the market is nowhere near as inefficient for that?
Yeah, we are not so efficient close to the start of the match, of course. We are aware of that, and that's why even we try to avoid those bets at the end, because probably if the odds are growing, it's because there is a very good reason behind that increase of the odds that we don't know. So we try to avoid late bets in football, but we don't do that in table tennis because we even have more information. The player has just played a match, we take that match into account, and then we bet on the next one. And there is a 10 minutes window to place that bet, and you have the best information, even best than the bookies. It's all advantages to place bets close to the match. But in football, it's not like that. We can balance a little bit, or we can wait a little bit. But the sooner you bet is best for the performance. In tennis, we start at the beginning also by placing bets as soon as possible. But as you know, that many bookmakers copy the odds from other bookmakers because they have that information available and they don't want to be out of the market. So we started applying some rules to wait until there are enough bookmakers, there is enough liquidity before sending the recommendation. Probably this will happen in football too, but we don't know when will happen because it depends on how the odds behave and which is the liquidity of the bookmakers that start offering the odds, which are the bookmakers that open the market. And I think that we will decide in the future, because also the users, we expect a lot of users to quit from Winner because of the pricing price. The price increase is normal, but that is a good thing for the users that stay.
I don't think quitting is reasonable in the slightest. You just have to look at the stats.
Yeah.
But I understand that people are a bit hesitant with the price, with the price increase. And I've seen some people look at the charts from previous years, and just on behalf of the awarded users, I want to ask, do you think there is a real possibility of a complete catastrophe in football? Because let me explain. If you look at the previous records of football, some weeks that were bad were not just bad, they were disastrous. And in the long run, that means almost nothing. But for a user who just begins with the new volume, it may basically spell disaster if one of the bad weeks repeats at the same magnitude, but with the current volume. So do you think there is room to worry about this possibility, or is it just so minimal that there is no reason to stress over it?
I don't know. We will see in the following months. And well, I don't know what are the users going to decide, if staying or not, but probably that was also one of the reasons of restricting the availability of new spots for users, because and probably we will apply this also in tennis, because we are close to the limit of the users we can provide our service, as they are competing between them. And even with more bookmakers available in tennis, that is a very big advantage, because we can monitor bookmakers in tennis much easier and cheaper and faster than in football. It is still a market where there is a limit of users, and we think that we are close of that. One of the figures is that around 80% of the bets we show in tennis and below the minimum profitable odds. So that means that we are consuming all the available expected value in the bookmakers. And in soccer, it's not happening that at the moment, but it will happen too, probably. And it's something that we will check. And I think that we need 1 year to be sure about which is the liquidity, which is the number of bets we are going to provide. That is one of the questions we had is people is worried about what is going to happen in summer. And well, I want to show some figures. I don't know if I can share it here. 1 second.
Also, to clarify what's going on in the chat, as long as you're in before May 15th, you have your football spot basically guaranteed. You're not going to have problems getting in every month.
This in football, it will not be like in table tennis where you have to contract the service every month. In football, if you are in, you will be in until you quit. And then if you quit and you want to come back, you have to wait for available spots or for available subscriptions. And I think that is a good way to make people think in the long term also, and also to resist bad streaks, resist drawdowns, and also resist those months with lower number of bets. And I think that we have to think in 1 year at least. Okay, I want to share my screen here. I have an icon here, is like a screen.
Stefan, all you need to do is purchase the new plan before May 15th. And then you're basically in until you willingly decide to cancel it. It's not going to get canceled for you.
Okay, can you see now this picture, this graph? Yes. Well, this is not updated. It's until beginning of 2023, but this is the number of matches. I also have removed 2020 because of the pandemic, but you can see here that in January or even December, you have lower number of bets. Then we reach a maximum around March, April, May. Then the number of total matches. This is total matches in all the lists we scan. We'll have probably here 5-6 weeks with lower number of bets, around 40% on the maximum. And then this is the week 30, is more or less August. The number of matches increases again. And as we are betting probably in around 15 to 20% of the matches, the number of bets is proportional to this graph here. Well, the matches bet here is not updated, is with the previous version of the algorithm, but we will probably bet 15 to 20% of the matches, so that we expect to, for example, if we have 2,000 matches per week, we expect to bet on at least 400 or between 300 to 400. And in the worst part of the season in summer, if we have 800 matches or 700 matches, we expect to bet in 20% of that is 140 or 100 bets per week. So it's a very big difference. But I think that we have to think in the whole year, and that is one of the reasons of making this change in the subscriptions or in the availability of the subscriptions, and also we encourage people to take profit during the most active weeks of the year.
Yeah, there was a user question that I imagine is the one that you just answered, which said, in the summer, volume drops by about 50%. Is it worth it to swap to tennis at that point? How does the low volume affect the profit?
Of course, in summer is the best option. Yeah. In summer is the best option. In winter, in December, we also having a very big decrease in the number of tournaments in December, and also the first 1 or 2 weeks of January. So both services have lower number of bets in those 5-6 weeks in December and January. But this is what we have, and I think that people in tennis sometimes they quit in December and they come back in February. But I think that for us is well, even in those months you can take profit from the system. And I also wanted to show anything else that is the football results and what we expect for the next year. And I have something here that is the average. Okay, I'm going to share again. Pestaña, this one. Okay, now you are seeing the total football history, where we had here more or less in the week 8, 9 of this year, that is first week of March, we updated the algorithm with the improvements I have commented before. And then at the same time, we are increasing the number of matches because we are close to March, April. That is the months where we have more information available, where all the leagues are or started or ending, depending on the winter or summer season for each country. And well, I expect more or less this to continue, and probably in summer have also a lower volume and a more flat month or weeks. But well, the expected yield for the average users will increase, and I think that it will reach probably 8 or 10%, because the higher odds we bet and the margin we are finding, the expected value we are finding, will probably improve this yield a lot. If we focus on the weeks since we applied this algorithm, that is more or less, well, we started in the first week of March, but probably we had here a mix of both algorithms. So I started in 11th of March until now, and the yield is 40%. I think that we also have been a little bit lucky, because if I do the same here for the total number of bets, this is 12%. So by betting in all the bets and betting as soon as possible, you get 12%. And we have been lucky, because I never expect to have higher yield for the users than for the robot that gets all the bets. But well, it's something that perhaps can be around 8-10% in the long term, and that is a very good number, taking into account that liquidity is higher than in tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you look here, yes, on average, users have won 2,500 euros, and I think that paying 120 euros is very reasonable, and I think that we will be the next subscriptions available in May, when after closing for several weeks, will be a price even higher, probably. Not so high like in table tennis, of course, but probably higher, and I think it's reasonable. And also, we want people to take profit from this. And when we had very low price, people were placing bets with very low bankroll, and they were giving information to the bookmakers very cheap. We want people to take profit from the algorithm, always take into account that users spend time, risk, bankroll, availability. They do most of the work in time consuming. But well, that is something that I have not commented, but we also developed this new version of the algorithm in a new computer that was around 10,000 euros of computer. So we also had to invest on that. and I think that the results make this worth, and we are very happy with them. So in the future, I don't expect such a higher yield like the last month. Okay, in the last month, we also have higher yield for the users than for the robot, but I think that we will have very good results in the long term, probably around 10%, and the number of bets per week on average in 1 year will be around, I don't know, 200 per 300 per week for the robot and 150 or something like that for users, because here average users are also placing around 100 bets per week, so it's a good number.
Yeah, even if it drops by half, I would say it's more than reasonable to justify the price. We're getting close to the end of the hour, but I do have a couple of questions saved by people who answered the email. Question number one is, do you recommend joining the football service if I only have access to one, well, he says 3 or 4 betting sites, or just like with tennis, is a huge array of betting sites mandatory?
Yes, well, it depends on the bookmaker. So if the bookmaker is offering most of the matches we recommend, with 1 or 2 bookmakers, we will take profit from the service at the price we are offering now. A lot of people ask, okay, I only have Exchange and Pinnacle, so I will never recommend to use winner odds only with those bookmakers, because sometimes you will be placing bets with very low value, and also you will be competing with the best bettors of the world, and probably we will not have enough profit to avoid variance and the risk you are assuming. But if you have several soft bookies and also Pinnacle, of course, if you find that the odds in Pinnacle are the highest, it's better to bet there than in other bookmakers. But using only 1 or 2 bookmakers, especially if they are sharp, is not a good idea with winner odds, and I will never recommend that. We prefer to combine both sharp and soft, so you bet in the sharp bookmaker when the odds are the highest, and other times you bet on the soft bookmakers if they offer the odds earlier or they offer higher value than the sharp bookies. We have a very good advantage in football, that we have more markets, not only home draw away, but also over under and handicaps, and that increases the opportunities a lot, and also is more difficult for the bookmakers to adjust all the odds so well, even in the sharp bookmakers. But it's something that we will see in the future. I will also evaluate which is the profit of winner odds only in Pinnacle, with the numbers of the users. But at the moment, I would be cautious or not so brave to start only with Asian bookmakers or Exchange.
I don't recommend it. Someone in the chat is asking if you would consider showing like bookmaker statistics to be able to like pick out which ones are more efficient for each service, and like basically how to determine which ones to prioritize.
Okay, that is something that, from my point of view, has advantages and disadvantages, showing that those stats. I'm not in favor. I wouldn't, or I didn't want people to choose bookmakers or to choose bookmakers depending on the specific bookmaker profitability, because it depends on how many bookmakers you have available. If you can place bets only in one bookmaker, then your numbers will be worse than 2 or 3 bookmakers for sure. So looking only at one bookmaker or making statistics separately is not a good idea. One of the main advantages of winner odds is that we compare odds and you place the bets in the best available bookmaker. So the results will not be very significant. I think that if we do so, we can do it from time to time, and but it will not be applied for every user, because perhaps users that only have one bookmaker can lose in that bookmaker, and other people that only uses that bookmaker when the odds are higher than the other bookmakers will take profit from that bookmaker. So it's not so easy to show results that are applied to all the users, because every user has different bookmakers availability, and results will be very, very different depending on that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, what I recommend doing and what I did when I first started was to enable all the monitored bookies and just determine which ones were more efficient, which ones came out more often. The ones that were not monitored, I would just constantly go check myself if they had the same selection, but maybe at a higher odd. It just came with experience. And to me, like the fact that WinRods does not release this information really didn't stop me from doing my own investigation. I don't think there is that much to investigate. Just go check which bookmakers have the markets that WinRods releases and just create an account on them.
Yeah. Well, that is something that I always encourage people to do is you cannot know what are you going to get until you test it. And I think that testing WinRods for 1 month, is it worth for sure? Not only because you can get profit, but also because you will learn if it fits your way of betting. Probably, if you follow our recommendations and you have enough bookmakers, you will take profit of it with a very high probability. But if you don't test it, you will probably lose on a very good opportunity. So I'm aware that there is a lack of confidence on a service until you have more info. And of course, we want to provide as much info as possible, and we make a big effort on doing this average user stats, and also, well, for example, this table or other communications we do, but you will not know until you test it. But I can say with no doubt that most of the time you can take profit from WinRods, and you will not know exactly until you test it. But of course, if you have only one bookmaker, or especially if it is an exchange or a sub bookmaker, of course, it's most difficult.
Someone's asking you in the chat, when betting on basically right on the minimum profitable odds, what's the edge that you're getting? Which is a pretty common question that I see people ask.
Yeah. Yes, it's around, a good number is 1-2%. So this is because, I was discussing this with Joseph Bukdal. So why don't you offer lower minimum profitable odds? Because if it is higher than 0, it's profitable. Yes, but you have to spend time, risk, and it's not worth to bet on odds that are not enough profitable. For example, this time is 2%, or probably in football is a little bit higher than in tennis because the average odds are higher, as I explained before. But if you are making the effort of placing the bet, then at least have a 2% yield is the minimum you have to expect in this case.
Yeah, you can also see it in the results when the early results are reported that you get that 2% edge when betting right on the minimum odds.
Well, one of the best analysis that someone has performed from WinRods, in this case on tennis, was the Smart Betting Club analysis, and they compared the odds and the first 5 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, and half an hour, something like that. So they did something that I have never done, that is comparing results at different times. And of course, the later you bet, you get lower value, but still positive. And we always have shown in the reports of tennis these minimum profitable odds. I expect to perform this kind of analysis also in football this year, because it's much more difficult than in tennis. But I will try to make some similar report on football than in tennis and maintain it. But I would like to do it automatically because I spend a lot of time updating the tennis report. And in this case, in football, I want to do it automatic so that I don't have to adapt the Excel file every time I analyze the results. And that is one of the objectives of this year, to have better knowledge of what is happening in football.
I'm really curious to see how things evolve, how the service looks within a year, how the profit evolves, how the restrictions evolve. I guess we'll have to see. We're going to have to be wrapping things up because the Spanish live stream is going to start. But I would say that more than enough points have been made to explain why the football tennis is well worth your time, and why, if you can only decide for one between football and tennis, the football might actually be the way to go at this point. Like, the yield is higher, which you explain why it's not like the only thing that matters.
Also,
the potential feels really high. You can probably last longer as well. And you're not going to be able to get in after May 15th. So.
Yes, and probably, as I have said, we are closing the subscriptions next month. We will evaluate and probably increase the price. We don't want people to have a bad experience in terms of liquidity in the following months, and that is something that we need some time to evaluate with the new results and with the new number of bets per week. So it's something that we need some time to decide, and that is the main reason of closing the subscriptions. After that, we will evaluate every month what is happening, because it's something that changes, and we will get an equilibrium.
Okay, one last quick question from the chat. If I subscribe for 6 months, if the price increases, will I need to pay an additional sum, which I believe has already been answered?
Yeah, well, if you subscribe now at the price of 6 months, you will maintain that price until you quit. Well, I don't know what we will do in 2 or 3 years, but for the next 1-2 years, for sure, we will maintain that price even for 6 month subscriptions. But for people that had the previous price and has just subscribed to the 6 months, when it ends, they will have the price they have now, that is 600 euros per 6 months. So if someone has a subscription that ends in August, they will have available the subscription. They don't have to wait for new spots, but the price will be updated to the price we have now. That is 600 per 6 months or 120 per month.
Which is a perfectly reasonable subscription to me, because as a WinRods user with a lot of experience, I can definitely say, if anyone here has not given the service a try, and especially if you haven't, just give it a try, because that means that you can do magic with access to dozens of accounts, and subscribe to the email list to rewatch this session and be notified of all the news and updates. So if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, just thanks to the people that has joined us and send us questions, not only now, but also in the emails before. And I hope that in several months, probably after the summer, we will have much more info, and we will start a full season in September with this algorithm 100% functional and tested, and we will. I think we will have very good results next year.
Hope so. Okay, looking forward to it. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
So see ya.
Thanks for watching. Okay, see you.
Bye bye.